Hello everyone. Today I want to tell you about what Signum.AI is, how it works, what it's for, and what kinds of tasks this tool can help you with. Actually, the concept is quite simple. Signum.AI is an omni-channel competitor tracking tool that allows you to analyze all the activities your competitors carry out in the external world and to find some ideal strategies that work for these competitors, and simply give you suggestions on what you need to do to surpass these competitors. And today I want to show you exactly what this is, where to start, and how to use it. First of all, let's talk about what tabs we have in our personal account. So the first tab is the Dashboard tab. This tab displays key information about how many competitors you are monitoring, how many individuals you are monitoring. This is a very important point because in addition to analyzing your competitors' companies, you can also track the activity of key employees of your competitors. Accordingly, here you simply see key information about how many companies and how many employees you are monitoring, the volume of information you are tracking, and so on and so forth. The second key feature is Activity Fit. Essentially, all information about your competitors' activities is collected here. What they did, which job openings they posted, what changes they made to their pricing page, what marketing campaigns they launched. In other words, roughly speaking, if before you had to gather all this information manually, going through different sources, analyzing what was happening with them, then compiling it all together, and basically creating some kind of report. Now all of this can be done for you by Signum.AI's artificial intelligence. So as you can see, specifically within this company, we noticed that they are hiring certain analysts, business analysts, and accordingly, you can see this without having to visit, say, LinkedIn Jobs, Glassdoor, or any other similar sites. The second key point is that the tool's task is to collect, that is, to gather data on your competitors' activities from various sources and generate reports based on them. So this is value number one that you can get. Value number two is in fact the recommendation from the artificial intelligence itself, which tells you what you need to do to outperform your competitor. So roughly speaking, if we see that a competitor is actively hiring, for example, specialists in TikTok marketing, and we see that their sales and traffic are growing rapidly, then accordingly, the artificial intelligence will also give you a tip. Basically, it will say, guys, start developing your TikTok marketing channel because it's working very, very well for your competitor. Accordingly, to receive such a summary, you need to add a list of your competitors for tracking. This is quite simple to do. You need to go to the Monitoring List tab. Here, click on the Add New List button. And accordingly, two options will open up for you. One option is if you want to add each competitor manually, one by one. For example, you just want to test out tracking a single competitor. Let's add Signum.AI. Click Next. On this tab, you can set up the key triggers you want to track. For example, by default, Signum collects all data about your competitors' activities out of the box without any specific focus. In other words, we collect everything, then based on what we've gathered, we create a summary and give you a suggestion. If you want to collect some specific information, then on this tab you can, so to speak, set a particular focus. So what do I mean by that? Specifically here, well, let's say, for example, we have a trigger like tracking keywords in job postings. That is, you can add certain keywords that you want to track in your competitors' new job postings. Why is this necessary? Well, for example, let's imagine that your competitor is Google. Just imagine how many new job postings they publish every week. Accordingly, if we make a summary of all these job postings, there will be very little productive information. Accordingly, here you can set a specific specification for the niche you want to target. Well, I don't know what exactly you could do there. For example, pro support. And accordingly, by configuring the trigger this way, we will only track those job postings that appear with the keyword support. Why is this necessary? Again, for example, if you are creating a support automation tool. In customer service, you can analyze what your competitors or potentially interesting companies for you are posting in terms of job openings with keywords like pro support. First of all, you will receive information about this, meaning you will get a summary specifically about this activity. Secondly, in addition to just receiving a summary, you will also get signals that a specific job opening with this particular keyword has appeared. And I will tell you a bit more about this later. So, accordingly, after setting up the keywords, you can see on this screen how many companies and individuals we have added. Again, let me repeat, you have the option to either manually add companies one by one here, and you can do the same with individuals. Yes, you can name the person however you want, add their LinkedIn profile, and in this way, you can add your competitors and key employees or key employees of your competitors one at a time. In fact, you can add as many as you want here. The second method is bulk upload. For example, if you have a lot of competitors and you don't want to add each one individually because it would take too much time, you can simply use this bulk uploader. For instance, let's name our list something for testing. Accordingly, there is a hint here about the format in which you need to prepare the CSV file for uploading. In fact, there's absolutely nothing complicated about it. You can see that essentially Signum can accept any list. It's very important that this list contains information specifically about your competitors' websites. In other words, if there is no information about the websites, tracking will not start. So the minimum data you need to provide to Signum when uploading in bulk is the company's websites. Accordingly, we upload the websites. Here you just need to match the fields. So roughly speaking, you upload some large list, for example, and export from your CRM system. Somewhere there is the company name, somewhere the company websites, and maybe something else. Here you simply need to indicate which field corresponds to what. This is necessary so that the artificial intelligence doesn't confuse which information it needs to use for analysis. Accordingly, here we can also set up certain keywords that we want to track. For example, as you can see, we added an employee, and now we have the option to track keywords in the posts of our employees from competitors that we are monitoring. So you can do the same thing. To clarify, let's say, for example, you don't want to track absolutely all activity concerning your competitors' employees, but would rather focus only on posts containing certain specific keywords like the word support. You can easily specify those particular keywords right here. Then, moving forward, if a new post appears on a platform like LinkedIn that uses this keyword, you will promptly receive a notification about it. And in fact, the system will collect a summary for you, but only when these very specific posts appear, ensuring you get the most relevant information. You can skip this step if you don't need to make any focused adjustments. Don't waste your time, you can just go ahead and skip it. So next you create a list, receive a notification that your list has been created, and here you can see that tracking is in progress. Our updates usually happen on a weekly basis, most often on Mondays, so if you, for example, upload your list of competitors on a Friday, then by the following Monday you'll already see a summary about them, signals and information about what happened during that past period. Here you can also enable or disable tracking for a specific list if you need to. And so, accordingly, if we happen to find any relevant information during the course of the week, or if any of the specific target signals that you have previously set are triggered, you will also be able to see a notification regarding that event right here on this page. For example, we added a list, and in this list, one signal was triggered. So, let me repeat once again. You will only see target signals if you have set up specific keywords or focused monitoring that you need to track. Here you can see that, for example, in this company, we caught a keyword that was triggered in a new job posting. What can we see here? First of all, we can look at the list of people we've added, that is the list of employees. We can add an unlimited number of employees and an unlimited number of companies. And you'll see a large list where each company will have its own employee. You can also view company details, meaning, for example, we have certain signals that we track at the company level. At the company level, we track signals such as new job openings, news, product launches, partnerships, pricing page updates, and so on. If a new signal is triggered, you receive a notification about it, and on the company's detailed page, you can see the specific signal that was triggered. You can see that during the past period, every week a signal was triggered for a new job opening with the keyword trends. And you can do the same thing directly with a person. That is, we can open and view the details of the person. And accordingly, if any trigger you set up during the focus stage of configuration is activated, then information about the focus triggers will also be highlighted here. So as soon as the sync takes place, which as I mentioned happens once a week, right after that, if we find certain activities involving your companies and personas, we will highlight this in the summary. That is, we will gather all the activities into a summary, and artificial intelligence will suggest what you need to do to outperform your competitors. Accordingly, here you can see that at certain stages no activities were found. So if during the week there were no activities at all, no news, no posts, nothing, you will simply receive a notification saying that no activities were found and monitoring will continue. This is actually very convenient. You receive the same thing by email, meaning that after the sync process is completed, you get an email that also contains a brief summary of the company and a person, as well as some key signals that we managed to catch during the past period. Now let's move on. What else is interesting here? For example, we also have an assistant. Let me remind you that we collect a lot of different information in real time about companies and people in the industry. Most often, this information is about job openings, corporate social networks, and so on and so forth. And by using this artificial intelligence, similar to how you work with, for example, ChatGPT or Perplexity, you can, for instance, ask something like, show me the top 3 trends in manufacturers. Yes, and accordingly, the artificial intelligence will go and analyze all the information we have about companies in the field. Specifically for manufacturers over the past week, and it will suggest to you, for example, the top 3 trends it currently sees. A very big difference, for example, compared to something like ChatGPT, is that this is real-time data. In other words, these are not delayed data. ChatGPT, for instance, is trained, I don't know, once a month, once every 3 months, or once every 6 months on some data pool, whereas here updates happen on a weekly basis. So we adjust these very trends every week, based on the information we've found. So you can also ask different questions, chat with this bot, or do some market research just to understand what's happening in the market overall. This tool is still in beta, but you can already try it out and see what value you can get from it. The next tab is Trends Hub. This tab provides quite a lot of value. For example, we have a sub-tab called Trends Topic, where we collect trending topics that we've found in different markets. So how does this work? Let me remind you that Signum gathers a lot of different data from various sources. And for example, one of the sources we work with is responses from LLMs, meaning answers from ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Gemini. And so Signum allows you to analyze which responses and which context of these responses appears most frequently, extract information from these answers, and create these convenient cards that let you see what exactly is currently in demand in LLMs, where demand is growing, and so on and so forth. In fact, this is super convenient because, for example, you can select the specific market. Well, let's, I don't know, pick something like finance. And accordingly, you can look specifically in the finance industry what people are most often requesting from LLMs right now and what is currently in high demand. And this is super convenient because you can analyze for a particular vector you want to choose. It's incredibly handy. Here, there's a brief quick overview and accordingly information on how to use it with examples and so on and so forth. Here, accordingly, there's a chart showing growth trends, which we analyze on an annual basis. Soon we'll also add information so that you'll be able to segment by weeks and so on and so forth. Here, accordingly, you can do the same kind of search, but by keywords. That is, if you have a more specific keyword that you want to track, please, you can enter it here and thus get some information about what's happening. There's also another tab, which is the Weekly Digest. In this tab, you can get the most interesting trends every week about what's happening in the market overall. So basically, it's a pretty interesting and informative digest about everything happening in the market, which in principle can be very useful for, say, market research specialists or marketers. Because here we highlight the best company of the week, that is the company whose demand is growing the fastest. This includes the product of the week, the market of the week, in other words, what's happening in the market, all based on the same assistant we showed you earlier. And the meme of the week is essentially just our own creation, so that, roughly speaking, if you're launching any advertising campaigns, you can use these memes in your creatives and, so to speak, stay at the peak of your productivity and effectiveness. So, once again, to reiterate, Signum is a tool that allows you to automate omnichannel tracking of your competitors, identify their best strategies, and provide you with suggestions on what you need to do to surpass those competitors. In fact, this is a very useful tool because right now I see that the cost per click is rising on the market, the cost of acquiring customers is increasing, and you no longer need to reinvent the wheel. You can simply look at what your competitors are doing, see what works best, and do the same thing to get all the benefits from the market. That's probably all for now. Give it a try. We have a 14-day trial. I hope you'll like it. I hope it will be useful for you. Thank you all.